Good afternoon. Um, it's lovely to see everybody, and I'm really, really pleased to welcome everyone to our webinar about real-time sign language for truly accessible transport. I hope everyone has a really interesting session, and I hope it's also going to be quite light-hearted, informative, friendly, and fun as well. In terms of an agenda, we're gonna introduce ourselves. I'd like everyone to get to know everybody here a little bit. Then I'm going to talk about the European Accessibility Act and what that means for transport providers in Europe. I then want to move on to talk about what we do as a company, what we have done in the transport space and why we do it. I'm then going to move us on to Marcus, who's going to talk about the passenger's perspective. So he's going to talk about a case study, and Leia is going to tell us about our plans for the future. So that's the agenda for the sort of next 30 minutes or so. I'd also like to frame this and say that it's a conversation rather than a chalk and talk exercise. So I always find that people get more out of these if there's sort of ongoing conversation throughout them. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put your hands up, to interrupt. We really don't mind. And then we can drill down in more detail if there's certain areas that you're interested in. So see this as a conversation rather than a lecture. So in terms of who we are, Marcus is going to kick us off. So over to you, Marcus.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marcus. I'm the Deaf Impact Officer here at Signapse. I'm profoundly deaf since birth, and I've navigated my way as a deaf person in the real world, meeting many, many people, different experiences. And I work with many deaf people and the deaf community to be a bridge between our technology and those members of the deaf community and how they can benefit from that. So very happy to be here, and thank you everybody for coming.
Leia?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Leia. I'm head of growth at Signapse. I've been with the company for almost 3.5 years, actually, so quite a long time. And during those 3.5 years, I've worked with a lot of our transport customers, which has been fantastic. Learned a lot about planes and trains around the world. I primarily look after customer success and customer operations, so making sure that our customers get real value out of their technology and out of their experience, and making sure that we, of course, have the structure that's needed to deliver that. So I sit really between products, engineering, and our commercial team, translating customer needs into a really good outcome.
Lovely, thank you.
Zoe.
Of course. Hello, lovely for everyone to be here today. I'm Zoe. I'm product manager. I sit within the engineering team, but I also work really closely with Leia across customer success. I kind of focus on how we can make our technology much more suited for the transport space across multiple areas of transport, like planes, trains, buses. And I kind of get to work closely with Marcus as well to hear kind of how our technology really impacts the deaf community wider. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit within Signapse.
Thank you, Zoe. And I'm Sally. They've just started some building work next door, so I hope it doesn't interfere with the noise. I'll mute myself if it does. I've been obsessed with transport ever since I was 15, and I was kicked out of the house and put on a train by my mom, and had to make my way to Birmingham New Street on my own. And ever since then, I've loved trains, and I'm still obsessed with them. I love plane crash podcasts, information about national data feeds, and anything transport related, really, including like ornithopters in June, and from Leonardo da Vinci as well. He invented an ornithopter. So anything transport, I'm absolutely obsessed with. So that's myself. So the builders have stopped, which is good news. And moving us on to the European Accessibility Act, really, it was started in 2019. You may well know this, so I hope I'm not repeating myself, but this was when the member states decided that they wanted to have a European-wide directive. And its aim is to create sort of consistent standards across Europe in terms of accessibility. It affects all walks of life, e-commerce, banking, but public transport is one that is most visible, and one that people across the different countries in Europe are looking at the most closely. And in terms of what's covered in public transport, sorry, can you just go? In terms of what's covered, it covers ticketing, passenger information, real-time communication, and also the way that products and services are procured. So it covers everything, really. There's nothing that's missed out in terms of accessibility. And it mandates equal access to information. Sign language is not specifically mentioned, but it is that if people are found to be failing in sign language, then it will be the intent of the law rather than the letter of the law. So the reason why we are getting so much interest from carriers, transport providers in Europe is that it's the intent of the law that they're concerned about, and that people want to be ahead of the game with this rather than sort of caught on the back foot. That's a bit of context. So moving us on to just the timelines. As I said, 2019 was when this was first thought of, and the European member states started to come together. 2023. This is when this year in July, new products, services and systems must comply with the EAA. So this has already come into force, but there is a grace period, and there is a grace period up to 2013 where existing systems end and everything needs to be compliant. And then there's a final hard stop of a grace period, which is 2049. Goodness knows how old I'm going to be by 2045. I have no idea how old I'm going to be by 2045, but that's when the legacy hardware, like kiosks, need to also be deprecated, really. So that's the kind of that's the timeline for what this means. Are there any questions about this part, or shall I move us on to the next slide, which is just about a little bit of history, really. We started at CVG Airport, and we started with a very simple product. So this was just a welcoming product that made people feel welcome and warm, and was what the airport wanted. That's still there 3 years later and has had really nice feedback. This is Jay. He's an American sign language translator, and this has made CVG sort of one of the flagship airports in the USA. And then we moved on with CVG to talk about people movers, and deliver people movers, which was very straightforward sign language translation, in a space that was quite high risk. It was quite high risk because there were large volumes of people moving, and also there were doors closing and opening very fast, and they deemed that was a high risk area. So this is where we started using generative AI. So the ability to change the gate and change the time as well. And this is real-time translation using an avatar, using an AI-generated photo realistic image. So this is like the basic work that we've taken, and we've spread it out, really. And which is where the next phase that we spread out to was in the UK, along LNER and a train company. So we started working with a train company, and we now work in 5 train companies in the UK. We also work with 3 USA airports. We provide 2 sign languages at the moment, British Sign Language and American Sign Language. And we also work in central UK train stations like Waterloo, Paddington, King's Cross, all those ones. We're also able to cover a very large amount of different platforms. So we can now cover screens, we can cover smartphones, we can use QR codes, we can be on totems, or we can be on trains. So I think it's pretty fair to say that any platform requirements that are needed, we can integrate with those now. So we've come a long way in 3 years. And then the next slide is just an example of this is LNER, and you can see what it looks like in real life. This is Marcel, and he's translating arrivals, departures, cancellations, all that information in real time for people. That kind of takes me up to that's our journey so far in the UK and the USA. I'm going to move us over now to Marcus. I've spoken for far too long. Move us over to Marcus, who can talk about his perspective. Thank you.
Yes, just here to talk about my view, really, my experience of daily living using transport systems as a deaf person. And I can assure you this is not a unique experience. Many deaf people experience this. It's discussed many a time. Lots of us, we love traveling about, whether it's to go to work or go to see family, friends, different social events. The issue that we have and the frustration that we have is when we don't have access to the information. We are always behind. We always need access to the information because sometimes that comes over the tannoy and we cannot hear that announcement. It's a really fast-paced environment at these stations and airports. And there's lots of opportunities for information to be missed. So there's a lot of barriers for us as deaf people. I'm going to share a quick video of a deaf person talking about their experience and their views when they use transport. So if we want to click play, please. Thank you. So as you can see from those three people, it can be a real challenge. If something happens around them. So for example, something comes out, there's a tannoy announcement, they've changed the location, they've changed platform, they've changed gate. We feel ignored, we feel excluded because we don't get that information, and that doesn't feel fair. We are the last to know. We have to approach other members of the public sometimes or find member of staff, and then we have to try to communicate and make ourselves understood and then understand the response back to know where we're meant to be. I've spoken to many deaf people and they've said the instant access to AI would be such a benefit to their life. The feedback we've had is outstanding. It's all really positive because it's all happening in the main area, on the main concourse, with the main transport links. It's on the platform, it's on the concourse, it's accessible and available everywhere. So if anything happens, that information is relayed on all the different screens. So the challenge for us now is to break down those walls, to get that accessible information out there, and that's what's really important. And just to say, lots of deaf people say subtitles lots of people think subtitles are okay for deaf people, but actually it's very different. It very much depends on your upbringing, where you grew up, where you went to school, your background, your access to education. And so people's level of English really varies. Some, yes, may be able to read well, and so would be able to follow any subtitles, but others wouldn't. Sign language is accessible. We think in sign. Sign follows a different grammatical structure, have different grammatical rules to English. So it's not always accessible when something is just written as subtitles as an announcement. So deaf people who are reliant on that are still behind. And again, as I say, when you're in a fast-paced environment, maybe you don't have time. Maybe you've read it, you've worked out what that actually means, you've worked out where you need to be, and then that train has gone. Having something available in sign language just empowers deaf people to access the information in real time at the same time as their hearing counterparts, and can then go and get that train or understand there's a delay. And it makes transport accessible because it makes the information accessible. And it gives more independence. We're not reliant on other members of the public to try and communicate with us and let us know what's going on. It can actually be quite harmful to deaf people, making them feel quite small, making them feel really disempowered. So having this available now in the airports, on the train stations, is a massive benefit to all the deaf community who've been accessing this so far. So thank you so much for listening to me.
I'm sorry. That's everyone long. And thank you, Marcus. And then just kind of following on from what Marcus has said, I thought it'd be really great to kind of show you some real kind of case studies. And one that we've just done with British Airways, which was the first time we'd use our new product that we launched earlier this year, which is SignStream in transport. I just show you this video here. So we had it across 3 gates at Terminal 5 in Heathrow, where it allowed passengers to be able to scan the QR code, which was 2 examples here, whereas we had it on little signs and a big kind of billboard as well. Allowed them to scan the QR code, and it showed some microsites where we gave live updates on what was happening with the gate information for the flights. This was all in real time. Anything that a hearing person would hear was translated immediately into sign language for any deaf travelers. We also had it on the screens just here in this video, which was on one of our gates, which showed it as well. So this wasn't on a microsite, this was on the screen, and you could scan it and give feedback as well. We got a lot of really great feedback, including one piece of feedback that said they went on holiday with a big smile on their face, which meant a lot to everyone here at Signapse because it was a really great project to work on, a lot of hard work, and to be able to hear some great feedback that someone's gone on holiday with a smile on their face, kind of making them feel empowered and having the information they need was a great win for all of us. And I think kind of slightly moving on to what we're kind of aiming to do moving into next year is we're looking at launching ASL in AI sign language next year as well. It will be early 2026, which we're all very excited about. ASL is the 3rd most widely used language in America. So there's a lot of the deaf community out there who will be able to benefit massively from this new development, and we're all incredibly excited. This will be our second AI sign language after BSL, and then kind of moving on into next year as well. We're really interested in going across more into European languages, where we'd love to be able to find a partner to work with to be able to create some real kind of memorable and make a huge difference to a lot of countries across Europe as well. So that's kind of where we're sitting at the moment with the product, and I'll hand over to you, Leia.
Great. Thank you, Zoe. It's a fantastic case study. So I guess let me start just by setting the scene in terms of this particular opportunity. So for those of you that maybe aren't familiar, EIT Urban Mobility is one of Europe's major innovation programs. It's an initiative of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which is actually a body of the European Union. And it's committed to accelerating the transition to what they call sustainable mobility. So they do that by providing businesses, startups, universities, and the public sector with access to funding and markets and knowledge, all to help them develop and deploy solutions which address some of the mobility challenges which are found in European cities. So this year they have a open call for a grant funding opportunity, and one of the themes is public transport, which is very exciting for us. So they are looking at proposals for solutions which can strengthen public transport and make it more attractive to users. So there's up to 2 million euros available per project, with up to 65% of the costs covered by the grant. And the model is really designed for partnerships. So they're looking for a collaboration between at least 2 entities established in 2 different European member states or countries that are associated with Horizon Europe. And the project can last up to 2 years. So sorry, if you just want to move to the next slide for me, thank you. So we would really love to leverage this opportunity to address the challenge of deaf accessibility in a new public transport geography. So as we've shared already, what makes public transport more attractive to deaf users is sign language accessibility. And that's going to play a really important role in the context of the EAA as well, of course. So we've proven the impact that our technology has in transport, both in UK and in the American market, and now we want to apply this in a European setting. So we could use this grant to develop capabilities around a completely new sign language, which is incredibly exciting, and to work with a partner who can help us deploy a pilot of that sign language in the corresponding public transport market. So EIT Urban Mobility are really looking for projects that are going to be scalable across Europe, that can show really strong market potential. So we want to explore that with a great partner. So if you were to work with us on this project, you would help us identify a market where a pilot could be strategic. So that would be a geography where transport operators would recognise the value of our technology, what that would do for their passengers, and perhaps have the appetite to eventually scale that and adopt that. And if you're joining us, I think the benefits would be pretty immediate. You add a proven accessibility innovation to your product stack, you get a co-funded integration with fairly minimal tech burden, and you'd have a live reference site for a new public transport innovation, which can then be replicated across additional geographies. So we're looking for the right partner to help us build on our existing success, someone who sees the long-term opportunity of a collaboration with us and wants to be part of bringing Signapse technology into the European public transport market. So if you think that could be you, please let us know, and do feel free to ask any questions as well. Perfect timing.
So thank you for that, Leia. I mean, questions from participants are very welcome at this stage. If we have any, can you see any in the chat, Leia?
I can see just a couple coming through. So first one, can you tell me again why current accessibility tools like captions or announcements are inadequate for sign language users in transport, I think?
That's probably a good question for Marcus, but happy to take that if you want, Marcus.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. Accessibility is a very powerful word for deaf people because the language itself, sign language, has a completely different structure from the English used in captions and subtitles. So we can read that information, but an awful lot of information is lost, the detail of the context. So we don't receive the information fully as a hearing person using English would. And there also quite often are misunderstandings when deaf people try to read English captions quickly, whereas sign language is a very powerful way of fully providing that access. And you know the message is going to be understood first go by the deaf sign language user. So it's a significant difference between captions and VSR.
Thank you. I hope that's enough information. But I mean, if you do want any more information on that, please feel free to reach out and we can answer that separately. What's the next question?
So another good question. So how do you integrate real-time sign language translation into existing information systems, announcements, display boards, apps or kiosks, for example?
Okay, so do you want to answer that question, Zoe, or do you want me to?
I'm happy to take this one if you like, I don't mind. So we currently have two different APIs that we use. So we have a transport API, which is all the ones you will see in our train stations across up and down the UK. That is our transport API, which is our constrained translations. And we have our new API, which is SignStream, which was launched earlier this year. And this is what we use for the British Airways case study, which allows you to basically translate anything into sign language. So it's quite a simple just API integration that can work across different screens, different partners, different mobile apps. It's very diverse and it's very easy to use. We've had good feedback to say it's a lot easy to set up as well. So I hope that's true.
Thank you. And I think also to say that I've just done some work on this, but at the moment for our existing product, we have a 0.2 seconds latency between the message and then the sign language video. In the streaming space, we provide to broadcast sectors, it's 7 seconds, which is around the same time as 7 seconds is kind of like sort of 7 seconds is decent, but it's still 7 seconds, whereas the transport product 0.2 seconds. So very, very pleased with that. I think that's about as near real time as you can possibly get, really. So I hope that answers that question.
Great. And I think that answers one of the other questions as well, which was what does real time mean in this context? How fast must the translation occur? So yeah, pretty fast is the answer. We're doing it already.
Yeah, it's kind of transport was our first product, so it means like it's also like our most well developed as well. So.
Yeah. Another question about regional sign language. How do regional sign languages like British Sign Language versus American Sign Language and dialects complicate the provision of real-time translation in transport?
I'm very happy to answer that one. It does complicate it. I think we'd be like completely wrong to say that it's simple what we're doing. And the first time we did British Sign Language, it took us 2 years and it cost us £3 million. It's taken a lot of research to get British Sign Language. American Sign Language, we calculate it to be about 6 months for a minimal viable product. And that's taken us about £500,000. So it's getting faster, it's getting cheaper, but it's still a problem that's not easily solvable. It's a significant issue. But as we're getting the recipe right, it's getting faster and quicker as well. And we're finding that the advances in Gen AI are also feeding into advances in the company as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess also to say that there are a lot of languages in Europe. I think some of the biggest ones are Spanish and German, but I think there's a total of about 23 different sign languages across the whole of Europe. So it's a problem that it has added complexity to it, but it's definitely on our roadmap. Thank you. And I think we probably have time for one more question.
Right, there's a question that's just popped up. Thank you for the insightful presentation. I'd like to ask whether your team is also working on initiatives specifically addressing the needs of the deaf-blind community or are planning to do so in the near future.
I can talk to that. The answer is no. In a nutshell, we get asked if we can do a lot of things. We get asked often if we can do like receptive sign language using AI, so that if we can understand what people are saying, and work that out and produce it as text. And we're really trying to focus on what we do as a company, do one thing well. So we do one thing well, which is translating spoken or written words into sign language using AI. And with that as our focus, then we're kind of we're getting to where we need to get to as fast as possible. So I'm afraid that's for a different company to solve that problem, and I wouldn't even know where to start. To be frank, it's not my speciality. So we're doing what we do really well. Any suggestions on how we would do that? It would be interesting conversation to have. So,
Any other questions, Leia?
There's a couple more. Should we just do one more?
I think we've got time for just one more.
Just one more. Okay, so this is sort of related to the grant. So how strong is operator demand for sign language content? I mean, I'm happy to speak to this a bit, and feel free to chime in as well, Sally. And I would say that operator demand is growing steadily for some. We've certainly found this in the UK and in some parts of America. It's a preference for innovation and finding interesting solutions to these problems. It's not always the key driver. Sometimes the driver is obligation and risk, and operators are going to be thinking about the European Accessibility Act and how that applies, and they'll be under a lot of pressure to provide accessible passenger information in that way. What operators don't have yet is a really easy, low-cost way to deliver sign language on screens or the infrastructure that they already have. And I think that's one of the things that makes this grant opportunity so attractive. It gives us this real world way to test something that we know operators are going to need to address at some point, one way or another. So while they might not wake up saying, oh, I need a sign language screen today, they do need solutions that help them meet their obligations and reduce that risk and fit into their existing infrastructure. So that's, I think, the real demand signal.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Leia. And I think I'll close the session now, unless there's anything else. But I wanted to say, a really big thank you to all the participants, as well as Leia, Zoe, and Marcus. And I think Ray wants to say thank you as well. So a big thank you from all of us. Thank you for having so many people come as well. It's been great that this has been sort of generated a lot of interest. We will be sending out a recording of this for posterity, and we also will have a sort of white paper that will be available as well. So and I think the third route to information will be just reach out to us. I'm always on LinkedIn, or drop us an email, and we'll be happy to answer any questions as well. So big thank you from me, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.